You know, we hear a lot about international justice, but have you ever stopped to think about how it actually works? I'm not talking about the high-level theory, but the real nitty-gritty, day-to-day stuff. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going deep inside the world's highest court by digging into the actual original paperwork from a case way back in 1955.
And really, we're trying to answer one big question here. We're going to follow this incredible paper trail, treating these historical documents almost like clues in a detective story. A global investigation into how the machinery of justice really turns.
All right, let's get right into it. What you're looking at here is our main piece of evidence, the actual table of contents for the case file. And I mean, this is not a summary, this is the real deal. It's the official record from the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. And right away, you can see our story kicks off with a request that was filed all the way back in 1954. So, you might be asking, who's making the request? And what's it even about? Well, the client, if you will, was the United Nations General Assembly itself. And the puzzle they handed the court had to do with voting procedures for a place then known as the Territory of Southwest Africa. That was the specific legal knot they needed the world's top judges to untangle.
Now, this is a really important detail. What the UN asked for wasn't a verdict. It's something called an advisory opinion. So think of it this way. This isn't a courtroom drama with a winner and a loser. It's more like the court is acting as the world's most brilliant legal consultant. They're not passing judgment. They're providing a super authoritative guide to help the UN figure out what to do next.
Okay, so the UN has asked its question. What happens now? Does the court just, lock itself in a room and debate? Not at all. The very first thing they do is reach out to the entire world with an invitation. And this right here is that invitation in action. I mean, look at this. It's the actual letter sent by the court's registrar on December 16, 1954. It went out to every single member state of the UN, and the message was pretty simple. Essentially, hey everyone, we've got this really tricky legal question. Do any of you have information or a legal argument that might help us figure it out?
And just to be clear, this wasn't some casual, get back to us whenever kind of thing. No way. The court's president laid down a hard deadline, March 15th, 1955. That's it. The clock was officially ticking for any nation that wanted to have its say.
So let's see what happened next. As that deadline got closer and closer, the mailbags at The Hague must have started filling up. So the big question is, how did the world respond? Okay, and right away something fascinating starts to happen. A pattern emerges almost immediately. We see the United Kingdom's response, very formal, saying they do not intend to intervene. Then you see Canada's, which is almost identical. They do not wish to avail itself of the right. It's basically a very polite, no thanks.
And it just keeps going. Here's one from Australia. Same deal. They do not propose to submit a written statement. And look, Pakistan uses the exact same wording as Canada. A really clear trend of countries choosing to sit this one out was taking shape. But then, just as you're starting to wonder if anyone is going to weigh in, this letter shows up. It's March 11th, just a few days before the deadline. It's from the U.S. ambassador, and it's not a no thanks. It includes 2 copies, in English, of a written statement. Boom. A major world power was officially in the game.
So, who else decided to participate? Well, it ended up being a pretty small but really interesting and diverse group. You've got India, Poland, Israel, the Republic of China, and Yugoslavia joining the United States. A fascinating mix of countries, each deciding they had something important to add to the conversation. So when you lay it all out like this, the contrast is pretty striking, isn't it? On one side, you have this eclectic group of nations that submitted their legal takes, and on the other, you've got this block of countries, a lot of them major Commonwealth powers, who all formally declined. This split response really paints a picture of the world in 1955, with different countries making different calculations about whether to get involved.
Okay, so all the written statements are in. What's next? Well, now the really crucial behind-the-scenes work starts. This is where all these separate documents from around the world have to be turned into one single organized case file for the judges. And just to give you a sense of the scale here, check this out. This is a letter from the UN Legal Council confirming that they're sending over 30 dossiers in English and 30 dossiers in French. 30 of each. That one little detail just shows you what a massive logistical job this was. It's not simple stuff. It really reveals just how systematic this whole process is. Think about it. The registrar has to log every single letter, compile all the different statements, translate everything into both of the court's official languages, and then make sure that every single judge gets an identical, complete file. Nothing is left to chance.
So once the paper part of the case is all bundled up, the court announces the next phase. And remember, this is 1955. So how do they do it? By telegram. Kind of cool, right? This one, sent on March 23rd, sets the date for public hearings, the oral arguments, for Tuesday, May 10th. This was supposed to be the chance for countries to show up and make their case in person.
All right, so the date is circled on the calendar. The public hearings are scheduled. The stage is all set for this big, live, international legal showdown. But what happened next was, well, it was a bit of an anticlimax, actually.
Turns out nobody came. That's right. Even the countries that sent in written statements, like the US, let the court know they wouldn't be showing up to argue in person. And that's actually really telling. It meant that everyone felt they had already said everything they needed to say on paper. The investigation part of this whole thing, it was officially done.
So then, after all those months of letters flying around the globe, of translating and compiling, this one short, simple telegram goes out on June 2nd and announces the grand finale, the public reading of the court's advisory opinion. It's set for June 7th at 4:30 p.m. This was it. The moment of truth had finally arrived.
I mean, think about the whole journey. From that first question by the UN to the court's invitation to the world, all the way through the flurry of yes and no responses and the painstaking work of building the case file, the entire massive machine of international justice had done its job. The process was over. The only thing left to know was, what did the judges decide?